Welcome, everybody, to the American Space Museum. I'm Mark Marquette. So glad you're with us to stay curious. A pretty special show here that come together, thanks to Terry White to my left. Hi, Terry.
Hey,
Good to
glad to
see
be
you.
here.
We're glad to have you here, Terry. And Jim Furr is next to me here. Furr. You'll see his name on the bottom down there. Jim, Public Relations with the United Space Alliance, that, of course, managed the shuttle the last 10 years of its great 30-year legacy. Glad to have you here.
Glad to be here.
We're going to talk a little. Jim was bequest a special map from the Forestry Service. We're going to look at, talk about the Columbia recovery. As sad as that always is to talk about, it is intertwined with some great human stories of perseverance and the determination for you all, not just to bring your 7 friends back, but also the 8th member of the crew was the orbiter Columbia, right, Jim?
Correct.
You guys had a fondness for the orbiters, like our pets, I'm gonna say.
We had a fondness for all of them. The each one was unique and had its own personalities almost.
Uh, well, we'll talk some about that. Terry's been on the show once a month for almost 2 years now. Terry, how you doing?
We're doing all right. Yep.
Got your family watching around the world? Travis is in where?
He's in Poland still, so
All
yeah,
right.
yep. He just got back from Italy
Hi, Travis,
on
and
Sunday
and
night. But yeah,
hello to the whole family in Louisiana
yes,
down there. So you all have a good Thanksgiving.
did and
Great.
nice and quiet.
Nice and quiet. I was around some toddlers, my
Yeah.
granddaughters. It was not
It
quiet.
was not.
It was not quiet. Those little girls loved to scream, and had a good time though. But we had Gabriel Rothblatt, our executive director, on yesterday, and I'm the director of the museum, and we've already got a month under our belts. Looking forward to a great first quarter of the year with some events we have, including Shuttle Fest. April 11th, 12th, and 13th, because Jim and Terry knows this. What we love doing here at the American Space Museum, and particularly on Stay Curious, is celebrating you national treasures, the space worker. And I feel there's no other industry in America that has impacted our world more. The automotive industry, of course, is up there, and electronics. But to think that you two helped build the International Space Station, that for 22 years has been continuously occupied and orbiting the Earth right now, is something that I think is very special. What do you think about it, Jim?
Hey, you're right. I can't disagree. It's been an amazing vehicle for the length of time that it's been up, to be continuously inhabited the entire time. It's an amazing vehicle.
It certainly is. And Jim, every year we do this fabulous tribute to our 17 fallen heroes, the 3 of Apollo and the 14 of the 2 orbiters at Spaceview Park. I welcome you to attend if you haven't. It's Sunday, January 26th. Andy Allen is our keynote speaker. Andy, of course, a pilot, commander, Top Gun, great guy, running his own company now, Aerodyne Industries. Did you have any doings with Andy?
Very much so. Yeah, I being with the Spaceflight Awareness Program for as long as I was, had fortunate to work with a lot of the astronauts and going out and doing public appearances and award presentations and such. And Andy was one of many I was fortunate enough to get to work with.
Well, he's a great supporter of our museum, as is his company. You had anything to do with Andy?
Oh yeah, worked with him for many years. So yeah,
Yeah, he's a no nonsense guy,
yeah,
strikes me, but he's fun. He's
yeah.
also a lot of fun. His wife Brenda, they attend a lot of things around here, and surprised we didn't see him at the rocket reunion. Actually, thought he might show up to that.
Yep. So,
Well, Jim, we know a little bit about this Buckeye turned Louisiana Cajun there and what he's done, but tell us a little bit about where you grew up and how you got in the space business,
I
Jim.
grew up, born and raised in the mountains of western North Carolina.
Oh,
Um, went to
what town?
Brevard,
Brevard,
just
huh?
like the county
Just
here.
like the county
Went
here.
from Brevard to Brevard.
All right.
But lived a period of time down in central North Carolina in the Chapel Hill, Durham area, where the University of North Carolina and Duke University is. It's been many-
Basketball's king there for sure.
There it is. We got a big year coming up, I'm hoping. But
Are they going to be good this year?
they were supposed to be, but they've had their moments so far. They're dropping fast.
Dropping fast.
in the rankings. So we'll see what happens with a little more practice.
A lot of basketball to play.
Yeah.
You can lose a game or two, say Ohio State fans, and still be a contender there.
It matters what's there at the end.
That's right. That's right.
But left North Carolina and moved to Florida and got in fuel business down here. Worked for the Amarada Hess Corporation for quite a few years and migrated to the East Coast here and was picked up out at the Space Center in the logistics operation. I spent quite a few years in logistics, working with the supply organization there, and then was asked to represent. At that time, it was Lockheed, but was asked to represent the company on the National Spaceflight Awareness Program panel. It was a national panel made up of representatives from all the major NASA centers and their major shuttle subcontractors from around the country. So that was I was very fortunate to be able to do that and spent almost 26 years out at the Space Center with recognition programs and working with them, our employees and stuff over the years.
What a rich career there. Marty Winkle, who's on our board here, on our Streamlabs board, worked the LPS program there on the engines. He mentioned that you had something to do with the Snoopy Awards that were given out.
Well, the space
we
flight,
talk about the Snoopy Awards.
yeah, I was just reminiscing in your room back here that special or was recognized in the Spaceflight Awareness or SFA program and reading some of the old posters and stuff that we put out, and there it was walk through history.
Yeah, we got Norm Carlson's Snoopy
got
Award
his
up there.
certificate
Famous
up there,
launch
and
conductor.
we probably over the years they had supposedly less than 1% of the workforce annually was presented the award, and as I'm sure you are aware, it was only presented by an astronaut. So it was very coveted. That was it was not intended to be the top award, but for the employees at the Space Center and most of the NASA centers around the country, that became the award and recognition that most people strive to achieve.
Little half-inch silver Snoopy. It's not even an inch. It's about a half-inch, isn't
It's
it?
smaller than a half inch.
Is it?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And flown in space by an astronaut and presented to you. And we've talked to lots of people that are honored to get that. Some even twice. But that's
piece of trivia about that you might not know. Back when the award, it was developed back in the Apollo program that Marty's probably familiar with. But
Marty, yes, he's one of the older people in the building here. So he
one of them.
you are the oldest person in the building.
When we
It makes me feel better that I'm not.
when we transitioned from Apollo into the space shuttle, the question was raised that Snoopy, the actual award, was designed by Charles Schulz with his Apollo suit on, the Apollo spaceflight suit. And there was Mr. Schulz had come to us wanting to upgrade the pin to reference one of the partial pressure suits that the shuttle astronauts wore. And after a lot of conversations and work on the thing, it meant too much to people. The original design was what they wanted to keep.
Yeah.
So the pin itself over the years has never changed from the original design that Mr. Schultz put out.
Of the Apollo suit, much bulkier and kind of than the orange.
Small enough that it's hard to tell what suit is on the.
Yeah, it is. But that's interesting.
Yeah.
And yes, of course, the command module and lunar module of Apollo 9 had to have different call signs. You just couldn't say Apollo 9 when they were separated, and the lunar module and that. So that's where Tom Stafford apparently liked peanuts, and he got up with Schultz, and we're going to call it Charlie Brown the command module and Snoopy the lunar module, and the rest is history from there. But it's become the mascot of safety. Correct, Jim?
Correct. That was the original intent, was to come up with a program that could try to impress the importance of safety with the workforce, not only at our centers here, but all the hundreds of suppliers and subcontractors around the country that produced parts and pieces to make up the shuttle. It was important to impress upon them to do the best work, and that people's lives depended on the products they turned out and everything. So it was a big safety award, as you mentioned.
Well, you had a big job, all those pieces and parts that you're kind of keeping track of. We're going to talk a lot. We're going to talk
That
about
was Terry's job.
we're going to talk to both of them about this. I'm going to step out here in a minute and let
people
them
don't
talk.
realize it, but the space shuttle was built in 48 of our 50 states. They were built all across the country and then sent to various centers for final assembly, and then
Right.
here for the ultimate final assembly.
So
and then
one
launched.
state could machine some special screws or something that were used.
Well,
Another
yeah,
one.
and like the wings, wings were built on Long Island.
Okay.
Yeah, the home spas were built in St. Louis, but all across the country built parts.
Yeah, that's what I said. Everywhere you go, there should be a national pride of what this amazing vehicle did. As we've talked to Terry many times, Jim, he was flying the best it ever flew. The last missions on there. We're going to take a lot of questions here from y'all. Here, let me get through some hellos there. Gary Gerald's up in Collins, Georgia. Dean Babcock saying good afternoon to everyone. Carlton Bailey, who photographed about 50 some shuttle launches or more, he says hi. William Whiting and I were communicating today. William's up in Michigan and going to be down here in the spring helping with our memorabilia show and Shuttle Fest. We'll be glad to see you, William. Dave Stangy, he's coming in to watch after being outside doing some decorating before the snow hits. He's up in Macomb, Michigan, up in the
Cold.
Detroit area up there. And hi, Terry, Jim, Mark, and Marty from West Virginia. Lynn Feather.
All right, I told you Lynn would be joining the show. She knows Jim well.
Oh,
So-
cool. Well, Lynn, you got a good question. Try to stump these two guys. Shoot one out there. Cliff Watson's waking up at 7 a.m. in Pomona, Australia. He sat in this chair during the eclipse week and updated us on life in Australia. But thank you, Cliffy. January 26th is Australia Day, a public holiday. All right, that's Sunday here. We'll be having our memorial service. It's just awesome from 1 to 3 during that. Mitch Rothman, a man's space, is down in Lake Wales, Bach Tower country down there. You ever been to Bach Tower?
A long time ago.
Oh, you need to go, man. That is such just a magical place. You've been there in a while?
I've been by it. I used to deer and turkey hunt.
Oh,
Wales.
yeah, there is some wilderness down there. Doug Forrest says hi from Los Angeles, and Steve Jokums. Greetings to Mark, Marty, Jim, Terry, and everyone. Stay curious. From Lake County Spaceport in Fox Lake, Illinois. He'll be watching the show, interestingly, here. He's an expert modeler, and he has a business that gives you decals. You can't paint all those tiles on the belly of an orbiter, so there's a decal that looks perfect for that. And Steve, all these pieces and parts that are just scattered, just unbelievable that they're going to talk about. And hello, Tom Celentano. Marty, you had a question?
Yes, my question. Terry, you set yourself up for this one. What two states was not involved in building the space shuttle?
Alaska and Hawaii, but we did not leave them out. Okay, in the early days of the shuttle program, Alaska was still utilized for tracking the orbiters when they were in space. Eventually, we went to using satellites in space to track them and that. And then Hawaii was one of our primary emergency landing sites for the early flights of Columbia.
Mhm.
So we had to send technicians to Hawaii to stand by just in case an orbiter landed there, that they could access it and get the crew off. There wasn't much else they could do other than that. And I always used to say, hey, don't they need a supervisor? And they said, no, you can stay here. We'll just send the technicians. You can supervise my phone.
Well, my friend Dean Schaff was the ground operations manager for the TAL sites in Spain and Morocco, and
You'd know him when you see him.
Yeah.
I would.
Yeah.
I work closely with a number of
Dean's
the
the Navy man.
com guys
Yeah.
that would travel to the TAL sites each one.
Yeah, I always thought that was a cushy job. Sitting there
Somebody
at the
gotta
catcher's
do
mitt,
it.
somebody's got to do it. And it was part of the safety of the 150.
A lot of work getting all of the equipment and the stuff over there to be stage
Very
ready,
much.
Yeah.
especially across the other side of the Atlantic.
We're talking about TAL, transoceanic abort landing sites, where if one of the main engines went out, they would still have enough power to get across the Atlantic Ocean and land in northern Africa or Spain. Theoretically, on some short runways there that actually had, think of a tennis net ready to catch the shuttle, and it had a sweet spot in the middle too, where they were aiming for. Is incredible. We've done shows on that. Marty's got a question today that I think you'll all like. Where is the question, Marty?
Should be a second back up.
Yeah, it's supposed to be in there.
Okay, the trivia question of the day is, where's the question?
Yeah. Well, it's in our slides here, so
I must have imported before.
I
you
must
set
have
it up.
imported it wrong there. So, Marty, the question is, what percentage of the orbiter Columbia was recovered? What percentage of this 200-ton spaceship was recovered? 200 tons, right? 100 tons empty.
100 tons.
100 tons empty.
Over
What
200,000
percentage
pounds.
was? And Terry's got the most update figure there. Make your guesses there. And sorry we didn't have that slide there, but we're going to turn the pages here and do get a little bit serious. I happened to be in our warehouse yesterday, and I've held literally 100 of these in my hands. Newspapers don't hold much value these days, but when you see them in great shape like this, Florida Today, and this is a scene familiar to you all. Both of you gentlemen walk this line. They're going to talk about it. That's astronaut Mark Kelly and Greg Box Johnson there. All right, in what was a scene played out hundreds and hundreds of times.
Yes.
So we're going to talk about that. Jim will tell us a little bit about how the line's up there. We've had many stories on it. We always take the high road as we celebrate the lives of the astronauts, Jim and Terry. And but what a tribute out at the Kennedy Space Center Visitors Complex there. That just brings me to emotion all the time. They
Yeah,
did
the
it
6
so well.
primary window frames from Columbia, and then part of the sidewall, the mid-side wall from Challenger.
And the windscreens still have pine needles in them, Jim. They didn't even clean them up. Now this is 20. We're going to celebrate 23 years.
21
And,
years.
2003,
21
21 years, yeah. Here coming up there, but you've seen this, I guess, and how does that strike you when you see it?
It doesn't seem like it's been that long ago.
Yeah.
It was as unfortunate as it was one of the greatest accomplishments during my career that I was honored to get to participate in. It was a big undertaking.
Terry, what's the facts of this recovery effort?
It's the greatest search effort ever conducted in
Period.
the continental United States. And I believe that they credit 50,000 people over the span of the searching and that, because some people showed up, they searched for some days, and then other people took their place. But 50,000 people participated in the recovery of the parts, cataloging the parts, getting them back here to support the investigation.
Amazing. Yeah, so it was a whole team. Here's our beautiful astronauts there that lost their lives. We honor them, and I walk by it every day here in the museum. Have a tribute to Columbia, Challenger, and Apollo here. It's what I'm blessed to know is to have met some people that were really good friends with these astronauts, like David Brown, who was known as the Navy Doc, a quite outstanding person there. So, Marty, you've got a question?
Yeah, a question from Steve Yokums. Did the operations of United Space boosters get rolled under USA? Was it done as a separate contract? It was rolled under.
Yeah.
Anybody?
The operations of the U.S. He means United Space
USBI,
Alliance.
Yeah, then it was rolled under USA. That's when they combined all of them under one instead of having three separate contractors. NASA only wanted to have one person to answer for all of it.
And Steve's guess is 40% on there. He's always pretty good. Travis says hello from Poland. Hello there, Travis White. And it must be middle of the night there.
Getting there.
Or morning there.
10 o'clock.
10 o'clock, all right. And Gary Gerald says it was around 40% on there. Here is the beautiful launch of Columbia in January. I forget what date it was launched. I left my shuttle scroll over there on the table. But Marty chose that as a beautiful backdrop there. And we're going to have a great look at Columbia. And for all you people that love pictures and models and stuff like that, thank you, Marty. There's several distinct features to Columbia, the maiden ship of the fleet. And the first is right above Jim's head there, and that is what they call the chines.
Yes.
Right? The black wing tips there that you see on the leading edges there that go up against the fuselage or the body there. Those aren't on any other shuttle. And why are they there, Terry?
Well, prior to STS-1 launching, the engineering community figured that the heating the underside of the vehicle when it re-entered would cause a big temperature differential between the upper wing and the lower wing. And this is a thinner part of the upper wing. So they had us go out and paint the white area on the upper wing glove, or chine, as he mentioned, black with a special high temperature paint. So before they re-entered, they could roll toward the sun, heat up the upper part of the wing, and then come on back in and heat up the lower part as they re-entered, and you wouldn't have a big temperature differential. We realized it wasn't necessary, so we never painted the other four orbiters.
But it stayed on there. You didn't paint over it white. Also on top of the stabilizer.
Yeah, it would have been futile to attempt to remove all of that paint without stripping it all the way down to the metal. We'd had to remove all the TPS and that, so it wasn't worth it. We just continued to touch up the black as necessary. On the very tip of the vertical is the silts pod. It was an instrumentation section that was added to the very top of the vertical. We used it for a while, then we quit using it, but we never had an opportunity to take the silts pod off and put Columbia's original vertical tip back on. So when we lost it, it still had the silts pod on board.
Tail number 102 was the official paperwork of this spacecraft. And we've talked about that numbering system before. You're kind of cool when you know a 102 from a 103 or an 099, aren't you, Jim?
Very much so.
099 was, of course,
Challenger.
Yep. And 103 was Discovery, 104 was Atlantis, and 105 was Endeavour.
And they never gave a name to 106.
They never gave a name to 106.
They built parts for 106.
Did they really?
Yes. That's like when we were building Endeavour, they'd already built parts for 105 before it was approved to build an entire orbiter. They built them as spares.
Huh. Interestingly, this date in history was STS-113 is in space until December 7th. That has our friend John Harrington on board. And then after 113 of Endeavour came 107. All right, according to my shuttle scroll here, launched on January 16th. So we went from December, they launched about 6 weeks later after 113 landed. Uh, and the number sequences got out of whack for various reasons, right, Jim?
Correct.
What was the
I've been out of it so long I couldn't tell you.
Well, it depended. Sometimes a payload would slip. It wouldn't be ready. So someone else would have to move forward and take that launch time, but we couldn't just switch around because we'd already built the orbiter to accept a certain payload. So, and there was weather issues, and then some of them were critical missions that had to go up. So some of them got bumped several times simply because another orbiter had priority to go to space.
Dave Stengy's got a good question as I put the crew up there again to just mention them one more time. Did Enterprise have a number?
101.
101.
Yes.
Okay. So it was the 101.
It had a 100 series number because the 100 series numbers were supposed to fly to space. Enterprise, after it had done all the fit checks and the landing tests and everything, it was supposed to be converted into a flight orbiter. But when they looked at the cost of converting Enterprise, they said it would be cheaper to convert Challenger. So Enterprise flew, but it never got to fly into space. But that's why Challenger had an O99. It was originally not an OV, which stands for Orbiter Vehicle, because it was a test vehicle, so it didn't have the OV in front of it until they actually made it flight worthy, and then it became OV O99.
And we've got Carlton Bailey was saying January 16th was his sister's birthday, so he can't forget that date. Took a TV in her classroom so the students could watch the launch, which was the culprit. We're not going to get into the damage and the culprit here of the disaster, but let me go here, Marty. Let me go. Oh, I want to go full. Yeah, I want just the beautiful people here that gave their lives. Kalpana Chawla is at the top. This was her second flight. You've got the commander, Rick Husband, his second flight. This is very unusual, a pilot once and then a second flight. He was a super Christian. They were up 16 days was going to be the flight. On the 16th day they came back. He had a videotape for his children of a Bible lesson every day for them to wake up and hear Dad do this. It's in the book by his wife, A Higher Calling. Rick's got his hand around Laurel Clark. She was a rookie, and they called her KC. She has her hand there on Mike Anderson. And then at the bottom left to right is Elon Ramon, Israeli hero, and rookie pilot Willie McCool, and then David Brown. David Brown was an outstanding Doctor of the Year for the Navy, and was that Dan's? Dan had been to space. No, he was a rookie too. So they had Ramon, Clark, Brown, and McCool were rookies. Four rookies, and three all making their second trip to space.
This was Dave's first flight. He had been assigned as what they call a C-square astronaut support person out at KSC. So he had spent a lot of time out at the center working towards previous flights that left before him and learning and training on what Terry and the crews did out there.
Yeah. They were nicknamed the Cape Crusader because they were here at the Cape. But when the flight crew had some questions about certain things, then guys like Dave would come down to the floor and look at what we were doing so they could explain it from one astronaut talking to another astronaut.
They were the interface between the work going on here and the astronaut.
Instead of flying
office.
the flight crew down here to look at stuff, they trusted the Cape Crusader to take a look at it.
Right. We talked about Cape Crusaders quite a lot there in the early days of Stay Curious 4 years ago. We had Travis Thompson, the White Room lead, on there, and we've kind of lost track of Triple T here, but he's always welcome back. You know, when my shuttle scroll here launched January 16th, And then the comment on the landing is Columbia and crew were lost over East Texas. And that's what the gentleman here are going to talk a little bit about. Uh, Again, there she is in the orbital processing facility. That's when her first days here, right?
That's when she rolled in after coming off the top of the 747, brought her in from the runway and put her into OPF-1 the first time. We had a flight vehicle in the orbiter processing facility, and you can see all the green area that they had not completed in Palmdale, and we had to complete it here. And then we also found an issue with the tile, so we had to strip almost all of the 30,000 tile off of Columbia
Wow.
and harden them and
Jeez.
put them back on before the first flight. That's why it delayed it basically 2 years. But the thermal protection system, the tiles, was not the only thing that delayed it. We had engine problems, we had other issues as well, and the vehicle had yet to be tested. So it came to Kennedy Space Center unfinished, and then we ran it through months after month of testing. We actually wore out some of the hardware before it ever flew. We tested it so much we had to replace it because it exceeded its mission life.
Just an amazing story of this space vehicle, first reusable spaceship outside of the X-15 is technically the first one. Bringing Home Columbia, a great book that I think is a definitive story there, written by Jonathan Ward and Mike Leinbach, the launch director. Communicated with Mike today about some other business. He lives in the area. What a great guy. Always willing to talk about any aspect of the shuttle. I believe he launched 37 shuttles in there. And Bob Crippen's got the forward here. Really something to, if you have not read this book, do so over the holidays. Of course, we go into January thinking of NASA's darkest week, but all these tragedies have a silver lining to them, Jim, didn't they?
Somewhat.
Somewhat.
It's still a lot of painful memories.
Yeah, well, I get that, and that's that's why we don't probe too much deep. I want these guys to talk about what they want to talk about, but this is a great emotional book about what happened there. The community I want you guys to talk about in Texas is the debris field. I'm going to bring up another. Yeah, there's the book there. Of course, I have my own copy. This is what happened that Saturday morning. The red is the flight path it was supposed to take over Texas, coming in within, what, 2 minutes of landing here?
A little bit longer than that, but yeah.
And were you on the tarmac waiting? What were you doing, Jim?
I had been on a business trip the week before, and I had just gotten in late the night before, and had gone to bed thinking everything was fine. And I got up the next morning, grabbed a cup of coffee, and turned the news on, and was met with this. So immediately changed clothes and headed into the office.
And Terry, where were you?
I was about 20 miles west of Melbourne,
Oh,
out in the woods with my son Travis. We were out hunting wild hogs, and I didn't carry a phone or anything in those days, but I did have a pager, and my wife sent me a message that I needed to come home right away, that there was an issue out at the Space Center. So I came home, and Monday morning got on a commercial flight and flew to Texas, or flew to Louisiana, and to Barksdale Air Force Base out there to start working recovery.
I'm going to set up this little map that Jim brought in. That's quite unique, and go off stage here. I did put my sweatshirt on here of celebrating the mission and the lives of these people. I wanted to, let me put this up here behind. You can stay right there, Jim. Yeah, grab that. Let me do this here. As we're very informal here on Stay Curious. And but
This is Jim's first show, so he's learning.
yeah, there you go. There, you guys get a little comfortable there. Marty, how's that look? That don't look too bad there. It's got some green in it, so we got some dazzling moire in there. But I gave each of them a. If you want to point out anything there, to set it up a little bit, you know, some of the stories that I'm amazed about is how you NASA team coordinated instantly. It was like, had you rehearsed something like this? It seems like it just came
You can't
together.
rehearse.
Yeah, you didn't rehearse it, but there was procedures of what to do if there was a landing or something happened other than at KSC or at Dryden. So that was there. But the people that were out at the runway supporting landing ops, when they realized that the orbiter was down, then they sent all of those people home to pack their bags and get back to the runway, and they would have an aircraft in there to fly them to Texas to go out there and start coordinating the search efforts and that. So it was a bunch of KSC folks, some people from JSC and that, and eventually then we swapped them out with more people and that, and rotated people out, and then there was a lot of volunteers to begin with, and then eventually we went to a lot of paid U.S. forestry firefighters and that who are familiar with the woods and that to go out and conduct the searches. So a lot of these volunteers, i.e. a volunteer, they weren't getting compensated. So eventually they had to go back to school, back to their jobs and that, or the National Guard had to go back to work. So
The Jim, what also I find amazing is like you got off the airport at Barksdale Air Force Base, handed a cell phone that's already programmed with numbers in it and all this. So it was so coordinated, but there was something going on. This is February 1st, 2003, and something was big was going on at Barksdale Air Force Base.
that's right. It's a strategic air command base. So they were getting ready for the Gulf War. So
The Gulf War was just starting.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of, and it's, B-52s is the bombers that could fly from here all the way over to the Gulf to accomplish their mission. So,
So
yeah.
Jim, I'm told literally they drew a line in the sand, the military people, and said, "Don't even put your toe on there."
Before my time.
Oh, okay.
That's the way it always was. Because at my first SAC base, Strategic Air Command, and that, yeah, there was things called no loan zones around the aircraft. No one could go in there by themselves, but they had to be authorized to go in there. But you had to go in as a or as a team of at least two or more. Otherwise, there was a security guy who could not walk into the zone, but he could shoot you if you walked into the zone. But these were nuclear loaded aircraft.
Yeah. Amazing going on at the same time here. Jim, tell us about this big poster there. How'd you acquire it?
Well, I was, the accident had occurred about 3 weeks prior to my involvement. And our organization reported directly to Brian O'Connor, who was the Associate Administrator, Office of Space in Washington. And
astronaut.
Flown astronaut, absolutely. And the determination was made that just like the employees here at the Space Center, we had thousands and thousands of people that had ascended on this area for search operations, and they would leave in the dark of a morning and come home in the dark of an evening, 7 days a week, and it began taking a toll on people. And Brian had contacted the head of our program to see the possibility of having representatives from the SFA program stationed at the 4 recovery sites that we had out there. And I was sent to Nacogdoches, which is home of Stephen F. Austin University. I don't know that you can see it on the screen, but there's a center line that transcends from left to right. That was the orbiter path, and this map depicts all of the searches, or depicts that during the searches, this is where actual components of the orbiter were targeted and found. And as I was saying, Nacogdoches is the home of Stephen F. Austin University, who has a renowned department with the U.S. Forest Service and mapping operations and stuff. and from almost instantaneously, we've got a timeline here.
30 minutes after
but
the event.
30 minutes after this
Coordination
happened,
of local law enforcement on mapping natives.
they
Wow.
were mapping items that had been targeted and found within that operation. And this particular map, it contains a timeline of the entire thing, but this basically is a completed map of all of the operations over the entire search and recovery days that we were out there, including Terry's probably more familiar with most of this. I stayed in the Nacogdoches area for the most part. Nacogdoches are down to the headquarters operation in Lufkin, but this includes helicopter operations, and in addition to the walking search crews that we had. Terry was talking about the number of people involved in this being one of the largest search and recovery operations ever held anywhere. We had north of the airport in Longview, Texas. I gave you the wrong name a few minutes. In Longview, Texas, we had a lot of the U.S. Forest Service firefighters and fire crews were flown into Longview and then bused down to the headquarters operations along the flight line. Over 18,000, almost 18,000 people from around the United States were sent down and actually participated, walking the backwoods of East Texas here in search of pieces of the shuttle.
Yeah. Now we use the walking teams when we find critical items. We'd put teams out there, but we use the walking teams. This line is 250 miles long, and we use the walking teams 1 mile on either side of that primary debris line. So they will basically walk elbow to elbow that 250 miles down through there, looking for parts and that, and identifying them, picking them up. Now with helicopters, we searched 5 miles either side of the line. So we searched 250 miles long, 10 miles, and then if we found something out there, then they'd notify me, and we'd send a helicopter out there to where a rancher or someone had seen something, and so we'd send a helicopter out there. But a lot of people don't know it. We actually used U-2 spy planes to go photograph all of this, including way out west where things started coming off of the orbiter.
Really?
Yes, yeah.
Now show where Dallas is there, Jim. It's
Dallas is up here in the
very close to Dallas. This was
pink. But they had reports of, as Terry was saying, they had reports in the very beginning of people seeing stuff coming off the orbiter as far west as California.
Yeah, I had to send technicians to Arizona, Nevada, different places and that to look at stuff. I had to send helicopters way out to West Texas because the U-2 had picked up some stuff that they thought it was, and there wasn't even hardly an airport out there. It was mostly a crop dusters thing that we had to send the helicopter to. There wasn't a little town close. They had to get their meals at the local convenience store and that. But yeah, I had to send a helicopter and crew out there. And these were U.S. helicopters that supported the U.S. Forestry Service. So they were 100% self-sufficient. They had their own fuel truck to go along. They had their own maintenance and that. So all of that went out there to support the helicopter that was out there checking the things out. It's odd. They thought it was part of the orbiter. It looked like a section of where the tile might be because it was basically 6 inch by 6 inch that we're seeing, which would be the lower surface of the orbiter. Turns out when Bob Neal walked up to it, it was a set of bed springs. But the photograph from the U-2 had it looking like 6 inch by 6 inch grid that was down there. So
never heard about the U-2 spy planes involved. That's very interesting.
We can't tell you everything about them.
Well, you eventually will on your deathbed.
Yeah. So for the search efforts with the helicopters, the most I had flying in any one day was 37 helicopters. Searching for, we had several helicopters staged out of the western end of it, but the most of them were staged out of Lufkin, Texas at the airport right there. So every morning I go down and brief them, give them their assignments, off they would go, and they would come back in right before dark, and we'd offload whatever they brought back and discuss what they had found. And so it was long days. So the most I worked was 125 hours a week.
Now, when we talk about what percentage of the orbiter was brought back, and that's our question of the day, how did you determine that? By
Well,
by
I assume it's by weight, but I did
Okay.
offload. When I was still at the Space Center, offloaded one of the last trucks coming back from Texas, and they're still finding parts out there now. People are still turning up things, and so they
where's
turned.
the Louisiana border? Here.
It's all the way over here at the end, across the lake.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, and there were parts that went all the way into Fort Polk, Louisiana. It's no longer called Fort Polk, but that's where the main engine turbo pumps went in. If you watch the replay of the streaks coming across, you'll see 3 streaks that still keep going when everything else is falling down. Those were the turbo pumps that are about the size of a beer keg and weigh about 700 pounds. So they were still breaking the sound barrier when they went into Fort Polk.
Wow. Those were the far, so the heaviest objects
Yes.
went the furthest,
Yeah,
apparently.
and they looked like an artillery round that hit the ground because it was a 14-foot deep crater, 13 feet in diameter, is the way it blew out when it hit down in there.
How about the SSMEs?
The SSMEs, I didn't track exactly where they picked up. I just know I flew in an Air Force helicopter and drove out to Fort Polk to see that. And I asked the guy, I said, "How did you see this? What made you think to look right here?" They had a sweeping radar, so it wasn't a constant radar. So they saw the parts coming down, but then by the time the radar came back around again, the part was already down. So they had an idea, but this forestry guy was out driving a four-wheeler out through the brush and that, and he noticed there was mud splattered all over the trees and mud on top of the leaves. And he says, "This is February. The leaves are on top of the mud. You don't have mud up on the trees."
Yeah.
So he got off his four-wheeler and started walking around. He separated the bushes and he saw this deep crater right there, slowly filling in with water, but he could see something metal shining at the bottom. So he figured he had found what he was looking for. They found a second one close, and they could not find the third one for quite a while till somebody noticed that there was an additional water hazard on the golf course,
Really?
and it matched the diameter of the hole.
Huh.
The turbo pump is part of the SSME.
What?
The turbo pump is part of the SSME.
Right, okay. That's
Yep.
the top part of it, I guess. And there I was thinking.
So
Well, I see a lot of white. You see a lot of concentrated areas there. But Jim, when I look at this, you see this amazing map. Well, there's a lot of little white dots off, particularly down here
yeah,
in that Harding County and stuff.
remember the height it was and the speed it was. Some of that parts really dispersed way out. It was something that you would find a part, and then something that was close to it from the orbiter was still miles away from it.
Sure, and when you have some of the parts would break off in chunks, it act like a foil or a kite or something. The speed and everything will carry those flat surfaces for a long
Yeah, get
ways.
aerodynamic lift. and
Aerodynamic
so
lift,
forth.
Yeah, out toward Hemp Hill, one of my spacecraft operators, who I stopped out there to talk to, he says, "Hey," he said, "you need to go with me. These guys were out here hunting that day, and they said stuff came in behind their hunting camp, and no one has searched that woods." And I said, "All right." So we drove out there and talked to the guys, and one guy's son came driving in, and he opened up the back of the four-wheeler, and he had parts in there. That they were part of the aluminum structure and that. So I took them from him and thanked him and that. But looking around, so I said, "Okay, well, we'll do a quick walk." It was a small team, and it wasn't elbow to elbow. We'll do a quick walk through this section of woods, and we went through it. We hadn't gone very far. It was late in the day, but we hadn't gone very far, and I found a piece of structure and that, and so I hollered at everybody. Oh, they wanted to run over. I said, "No, just stay where you're at. We'll keep on our sweep." And we weren't, like I said, we weren't elbow to elbow. I could hardly see the next guy, but we were just walking through, and then we found the helium tank from the forward reactionary control system. It had come down through the trees and impacted the ground, but it was still 100% intact. So, and then we found part of one of the primary seats, either the commander or the pilots, and that spacecraft operator had hundreds of hours of sitting in those seats. So it really hit him emotionally. So I said, "That's it. We'll carry the tank out. We'll carry the part of the seat out, but we need an elbow to elbow team come through this woods," because it was thick woods and that. So we went on out, but then they went in and found more, and they also found some of the astronauts right down the road.
Well, it is an emotional thing to talk about, no doubt. And Terry, I frankly admire you wanting to share it as many times as you have on there. It's a story that needs to be told. One, so it's not repeated, but two, so that we understand how important the lives of these people were to us. Marty's got a couple questions. These gentlemen got Jim Furr on the left here, Terry White on the right. We're grateful for them. Uh, Terry contacted me, said Jim had this fabulous display that we're looking at from the Forestry Service there. Marty, what questions you have on our UCAC family microphone there?
Yeah, we now have three questions. First question from Lynn Feather. Is there a number of parts in total found and cataloged?
Yes, there is, but no one ever told me what the total number of parts is, and I don't know if they released it, but I know we cataloged everything, identified everything, and that. But a lot of parts were no bigger than a $50, and they were just pieces of the aluminum structure. And then we picked up thousands of tiles, and some of them were still identifiable. Others of them, by looking at the thickness, you could tell, and the shape, you could tell where it came from. But others of them had literally melted and then re-solidified. So that was really unusual, and I never got a picture of some of those, which I wanted, just because
I'd never heard of count either, and I think Terry mentioned earlier, we're still getting calls and reports of people finding stuff now that are being sent back. So I don't know that I've ever heard of a count.
Well, I was there. They asked at the command center. They said, "Well, what are we going to do when we wind up the majority of the searching? How are we going to tell people what to do if they're out in the woods and they see something?" And I said, "Well, wherever they sell hunting and fishing licenses, you just put a notice up there that says, if you see anything and show some pictures that resembles any of this, contact this number and we'll have somebody go check it out." I said that way, these are the people that's spending the most time. I said most of the ranchers already know about it because we've been on their property searching and that. And they turned around and I'm told it's right on the hunting and fishing license.
Oh, really?
Yes, yeah. So it was a good suggestion, and it's working because people are still picking up stuff. So
Another question, Marty.
Yeah, from Gary Jarrell. Terry, were there any injuries from the falling debris?
luckily, none. That the closest I heard, I mean, pieces came down through a school roof and crashed into the desks, but it was a Saturday, so no
Yeah.
one was in the school. But I talked to one guy who was on hooking up a lowboy. That's a flat trailer behind a semi tractor and that. He was in the process of hooking that up to move some farm equipment, and he said something slammed the trailer and shook the whole truck and that. And he looked back, and there was a piece of aluminum structure stuck right in the bed of the truck.
Wow.
About 20 feet behind him. So, but that's the closest I heard. I mean, we had people trying to say that their animals were impacted by it, but some of the astronauts who we have are actually veterinarians. So one of them went out to check out something and says, "Oh yeah, that horse is definitely injured, but he's had that injury for several weeks. That is not a result of today."
Huh.
But not aware of anybody getting hit by any debris. People had debris hit on the highway while they were driving and come flying by them on the highway, but I never did get a report of anybody getting hit.
Another question, Marty.
Yeah, third question. We've actually answered this. I think Jim and Terry both mentioned this before. It's from Annette Melnichuk, if I pronounced that correctly. Is there a possibility that there is still debris from Columbia that has yet to still be found?
Yeah,
Without question.
that's positive because some of the woods I walked in, you could tell by the impact on the ground that there was something there, but we had no tools to dig it up with. We didn't have shovels or anything like that. We had machetes to cut our way through some of the brush and that. But and it wasn't in one of the key areas that we thought, pretty soon we found out there was some of the debris we really needed to solve the problem. We went and looked at where we found it and did more thorough searches right there. But otherwise, we were told if there was something like that and it was easy, but if it had impacted and gone into the ground. Plus, East Texas has a lot of lakes, a lot of marshes, a lot of swampy areas and that. When it went down in them, you couldn't find it. We actually brought Navy divers in to search the lakes.
Toledo Bend Reservoir was a
And
big
they couldn't find. We
targeted
even
area.
took and put things down there that we knew where it was, and the water's so muddy, and it's got 4 to 5 foot of silt down at the bottom that the Navy divers couldn't find the part that we knew was there. And I had one helicopter saw 2 parts out in a farm pond. So I sent 2 guys who didn't want to fly. I said, okay, you guys go out there with waders and wade out in that pond. And even though they had seen it from the air, they could not find it. They walk around this pond trying to find the parts, and they never did find them. So, yeah. And then some of the parts are still out there because some people picked them up and took them. You know, so they finally made it a crime to do that. So
Yeah, you can't sell anything you found.
yeah, you
in
weren't even
Texas
you weren't
or-
even supposed to pick it up, because I come back to command center one day and they came to me and they said, "What is this thing right here?" And I told them what it was, and they said, "Well, how much is it worth?" And I said, "In its current condition, it's not worth anything." They said, "No, how much would it be worth when it was new?" And I said, "Well, I don't have that exact figure." They said, "More than $1,000?" I said, "A lot more than $1,000." So they arrested the guy on felony charges, and they put it all over the news, and they put out a moratorium. They said, "This is it. You have 48 hours to turn in anything you have that you picked up, and there will be no questions asked. After 48 hours, you will be prosecuted." And they prosecuted that guy. I don't know. They didn't ask me to go to court to identify the part, but yeah. So that kind of ended that. And then the next day, we're getting calls that, "Oh, there's a part here and a part there," and everybody said, "Oh, we've already searched that area." I said, "Remember, you asked them to turn stuff in. They're not going to drive right up to the sheriff and hand him a part. They're going to drive out to about where they found it, throw it back out the car, and then go home and call and say, 'Hey, there's a part out here along the highway.'" And that's exactly the way it was. So we went out there and picked
I'll
up
be
a bunch of
darned.
stuff, including a helmet. So yeah. So,
Really? Someone returned a helmet.
yeah. The,
God.
the worst thing was a woman turned in her boyfriend, who was a firefighter over in the Hemp Hill area. He had the wet trash locker in his house trailer. The wet trash locker is where you put the stuff from the potty when you bag it up. You put it in the wet trash locker. So that's what he had in his
Ugh.
trailer.
Why?
I don't know.
Jim, what do you know about shuttle parts picked up?
Well,
Things that
my
were fo-
my res- I
or,
I want to get away from that a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
My area of expertise out there had to be in communications and public relations. I worked with the news media quite a bit in the broadcasting and some of the stuff Terry was just referencing too. But we did everything we could as a NASA family to try to let the people of East Texas know how much we appreciated their help and everything they did for us, for providing food for the workers, opening their farmlands and properties to allow us to come on and look for this kind of stuff. I spent a lot of time in schools talking to school kids. Terry was talking about animals being injured. Well, there was no physical injuries that we know of, but it was a traumatic experience for a lot of these young kids of elementary age, knowing that the shuttle had exploded and we had several astronauts on there that lost their lives, and they had a lot of questions. So we spent a lot of time in going out to the schools and talking to the kids and trying to explain what went on and how best to go forward from that. We took exhibits out and set them up. We had a exhibit module, 18-wheel trailer made up like the International Space Station, module on the International Space Station that is carried around the country to conferences and conventions and stuff. And we made arrangements for the trailer to go out to the local areas to allow some of the kids to walk through to get a feeling of what being in space was like and that type of thing. We also coordinated the families of our fallen astronauts. Were so appreciative of the efforts that everybody had made. When we got down toward the end, the families wanted to come out and spend a day in the field with the Forestry Service workers and stuff. So we coordinated the families coming out, and they attended a couple of ceremonies, but we dressed them in protective clothing and sent them out into the woods with some of the Forest Service personnel and astronaut escorts that were with them to give them a feeling of what the 3 months that people had endured looking for their loved ones and stuff. So
Gave people a lot of closure, right, Jim?
gave people a lot of closure. And in addition to that, on the other hand, we had the next crew up to fly. Eileen Collins was in line. Her flight was next, and we'd suffered a downtime, an extensive down period there between flights. So she asked that her crew come out, and likewise they spent a day in the woods going out
Really?
and searching and everything. So it was a pretty emotional time for a lot of people.
They wanted to participate in the search.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And we went around and thanked. I would go out to meet different people out there and find out if they had everything they needed, what else, like, getting more machetes for them and better clothing and that, because a lot of the areas were full of briars and that, and it was tearing up clothing and stuff. But
They've got briars out there that some of them were 2 inches long.
Yeah.
He was talking about machetes and everything. We would dress them in a lot of the Forest Service protective gear and chaps and everything because of the briar thickets and stuff that they walk through. And when he was talking about arm to arm searching and everything, it didn't matter if there was a thorn brush there, you were going through it or over it. So
I told him the easiest way to get through a lot of those was a very stout walking stick, because you can't push it away. It grabs you in that. So you take the walking stick, lay it down, and walk the stick up to push the vegetation down to go through it. Then pick the stick up and walk it through, and that's how you got through some of those briars. I mean,
it was slow going.
Yeah, there was days. Of course, it was raining and it was cold, but I took my jacket off and everything and walked through with no shirt on, because it doesn't snag your flesh like it snags cloth. So you constantly be trying to get the thorns out of your cloth. And I said, it's easier. They said, aren't you cold? I said, yeah, but I'll warm up once I get through this. So
How long did the search go on? The official, and was it 3 months? You got the date there.
April. We ended up the first early part of April sometime. I was the last person, last representative from NASA, United Space Alliance, in the Nacogdoches area to
Were
leave.
you?
So it was early April.
Of course, the 20th anniversary was last year. Did you participate in anything there, Jim?
I did not.
Okay. Have you heard back from any of these schools or anything? These people are now 30, 40 years old, some of these.
I have not heard.
35 years old, these kids.
you have to ask Leinbach about that. He went out
Uh-huh.
to the thing. I didn't go out, so.
I have been back out there within the last year and a half and talked to the guy that was emergency operations manager in Nacogdoches, and I also spoke with former deputy sheriff from the Houston area, Harris County area, that was headed up the local livestock arena / convention center type facility that was in Nacogdoches, where a lot of the search and rescue crews set up camp and lived for the time that they were out there. So I've talked to a number of people, but no ceremonies of any kind.
I had a lot of respect for the forestry service guys, the firefighters. A lot of them were Indian tribes, and they came from other areas of the country and that, but they are 100% self-sufficient. When they go in, they don't need a hotel room. They don't need anything. They come with all of it. So they have a semi that showers. They have a semi that's latrines. They have
Wash clothes,
tents,
wash and
stores,
dryers.
everything they need, and they come in and set it up. And that's the way they live for the 3 weeks. They come online for 3 weeks and then they go offline and they're replaced by somebody else. But that's the way they go to a fight fires. And if you're going fighting fires out in the mountainous areas, you're not going to have hotels for hundreds of people. So these people show up with all the equipment and all the food and everything they need and go to work.
Well, this has certainly been fascinating. Our Stay Curious watchers have really enjoyed you all taking your time to do this. Dave Stange says hearing it firsthand from people that were on the ground during today's is very impressive. Steve Jokums has a lot of sentiment for all of us, Jim and Terry. The nation owes a massive debt of gratitude for what these two gentlemen and all the volunteers in the search did on behalf of the Columbia crew. And I know that's the bottom line there was the human element of this. And I get emotional thinking about it, and you guys did it, and that's appreciate what you shared with us today. Final thoughts, Jim?
The only thing that I could add to it is to repeat what you did earlier, the Bringing Columbia Home book that you referenced from Mr. Leinbach and Jonathan Ward is an exceptionally good read. It has a lot of background and does a lot of talk about what it took to do that and a lot of the folks that participated in it. So
Yeah, excuse me.
if you haven't read it, I suggest you do so. And if you're in a position to buy a copy off Amazon or something, I'd get it and add it to your home library.
I meant to bring that other little book that.
Arlene Collins.
What book am I thinking about that we have out there?
I know it's the one that's Jim's trying to remember his name too. The logistics guy wrote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Norm Carlson?
No, not
No.
Norm's book. We said it's a little. It talks more about Lamar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was stationed. He headed up
Lamar
the-
Jackson. No.
Central Operation at Barksdale. So when a lot of the pieces that had been discovered were trucked from the recovery sites to Barksdale, he headed up that operation.
Yes, Lamar. Sorry about your missing out your name there. Usually have his book.
I'll think of it.
We'll think of it here in a minute, of course. But you know what strikes me about both these books and this book is the generosity of the community. I heard grocery stores did not charge NASA people for groceries. Terry, I think you told us about some fast food owner opened up his fast food chain in the middle of the night because people were hungry, and the ice cream, the Bluebell ice cream
First time I ever had Bluebell.
that they had just freezers of it, just stocked up for everybody there.
We had a Bluebell distributor there locally, and we made arrangements with them. They brought all the ice cream the guys could eat in one evening. Might have been Valentine's Day. I'm not positive. It was a holiday of sorts that they had ice cream and we had bananas brought in and whipped cream, and everybody made banana splits that night after evening meal, and went over very well.
Yeah, well, I like ice cream. Boy, I'll tell you, I got to stay away from it. Marty's got a comment on that.
Here
You
from Dave
said,
Stange. He says the book is The Silence and the Salvage, Losing the Space by Lamar Russell.
Not Russell.
Lamar Russell. Yeah.
Because Mrs. Russell, his wife, was Travis and Rebecca's elementary teacher.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Thank you, Dave Stange there. Appreciate that. He probably got that copy of it from here and reached over in his library to grab that. Fellas, we're going to put a button on this by showing what was out there at Kennedy Space Center. Everything came back to, what would you call that hangar? Where the parts were.
It's just space shuttle hangar facility.
Yeah. Out there, and to recreate stuff that was going on.
So, we laid out a grid on the floor and put all the different parts, and they were like the wing leading edge was on special fixtures around that, but to lay out all the parts as to where they got. A lot of the parts didn't pertain to the investigation, so we didn't lay those out on the floor. So this is ones that were what we thought were key to the investigation, and turns out it was. So
And we've talked to our good friend Mike Chinelli, who's over the Lessons Learned program at the. Most of this is at the Vehicle Assembly Building on the 18th floor. What's that?
yeah, I forget what floor it's on, but yeah.
They do have. Or did you have any part of some of the exhibits they put together, Jim?
No.
They do have some lessons learned exhibits traveling around the country from this, and there's always a nice tribute that people see at the VAB still today. Uh, of all the 135 shuttle patches, that I've come to know, this is the only one that's the shape of the shuttle. All right.
Right.
There's a lot of repeated shapes out there, but this is the only one that is the actual shape of the shuttle, and just so iconic. So, the answer to the question, Marty's question, how much of Columbia has been recovered in 20 years?
Well, several people I can't find the names right now. I know Steve Holcomb is one of them, and they say 40%. And that's what I think is in the bringing Columbia home. But according to Perry and Jim, I think the number now is up to about 45%. So they were right, but
Yeah.
And like
We're
Jim
close.
said, they're still finding parts out there. So
What's incredible to me is less than half of it.
yeah, but the
is
experts, the National Transportation Safety Board said we would never find 15%.
Oh, okay.
They've
Really?
never investigated anything that high and that fast that came apart, but they said, no, you will never find.
Yeah.
And we didn't find any of the lightweight stuff. That's what amazed me. There's a lot of really lightweight insulation in that inside the orbiter and that you don't see. Even with the payload bay doors open, you don't see it. But all of that stuff, no. We found some pages out of their manuals, but the lightweight stuff, and I was expecting it to show up in Alabama, Georgia, maybe the Carolinas, because the jet stream was
Oh, yeah. Was taking it off from
hauling,
there.
toward the east and that. But no, none of it ever came down, and some of it, because Columbia had a lot of gold insulation, real gold in it. In that, I mean, it's wafer thin gold, but none of that came down anywhere. So I don't know if it went all the way out the Atlantic or what happened to it. But yeah, it's not the kind of stuff that would burn.
disintegrate.
So yeah, it could have disintegrated because of the airspeed and that. But
Which is 5,000 miles an hour, getting over Arizona and so forth in there. Jim, I really appreciate you being here.
Glad
You're
to do.
welcome anytime.
Appreciate the
There,
invite.
come back and we'll find a happy story to talk about
Right.
there. But
There's a lot of them.
congratulations for what you did out there, though, to educate people. That's so important to see NASA again getting around the curve to throw the public relations person like you out there to let people know what's going on, because people hate being in the dark about when they see sirens and official people.
A little information is always better than no information.
There you go. There you go. And my friend, thank you so much for being
Sure.
here. I return to you your frizzy that you
Okay.
left here at the last show.
do you have a piece of
I
frizzy here?
just no, I don't.
You do now.
I do now.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm gonna put a shelf up there, display stuff there. So,
Just remember
this is the stuff that you're talking about didn't come back though. You didn't find much of that.
parts of that, but I'm talking about the gold foil. I'll show you next time, and then the real thin Inconel and that really lightweight stuff. I never saw any of it retrieved. So
Well, thanks a lot, guys. People that watch our show really appreciate from the horse's mouth, so to speak. Even when we're talking about a tragedy like this, it's something that every year we face, and the American Space Museum and Stay Curious always celebrates the lives of these beautiful people as they live on now in different ways, inspiring people still. So, any final thoughts, Terry?
nope, we could spend a week sitting there talking about all the different events out there. So
And we will spend more time with both of you, I hope, and have Terry back usually once a month, cook up something in January, and appreciate Jim again. We'll have you back on here. And what a fabulous poster there. That's really an educational piece there to see how quickly things happen. Within a half an hour, they were getting together
Tracking data.
tracking data on there. So, well, thank you, Marty, for a great job on Streamlabs there today. Tomorrow's Wednesday, and we'll do a little hump day shuttles of the month of December. I'm going to have a nice luncheon with some NASA legends, like I'll say hi to Jay Honeycutt for you.
Okay.
Tell
John.
him I said hello.
All right, I'll say that to Jay. You know John Tribe too.
Yes.
All right. Well, come join us. It's Florida Seafood at noon tomorrow.
Okay.
Y'all come down to Florida Seafood at noon tomorrow and have lunch with us, because that's what I'm going to be doing. And then we'll do another Stay Curious broadcast for your enjoyment. Until next time, I'm thanking everybody here for watching the show, and these two gentlemen for sharing something that's not easy to talk about, but really appreciate it. Until next time, I'm Mark Marquez saying I can't wait to see you again to bridge the space between us.